Hey, folks, and welcome to another edition and episode of the Lonesome Cowboy Podcast. And today I have another great folk musician who's been at it for quite some time. As a matter of fact, he's celebrating a 10th anniversary of one of his albums. And this is Shawn William Clarke. Thanks for coming, Shawn.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So, speaking of the 10th anniversary of your album, William, um,
Mhm.
tell me about that. That you've released a companion album to go with that celebrates that album.
Yes.
That sounds awesome. I would love to hear what that's all about.
Well, I think leading up to the 10-year anniversary, first of all, this was I think the first album that felt like had accomplished something I could be really proud of. I released a few things before that, but like they were kind of really building blocks
Hmm.
to this, which I consider kind of like where it starts for me as like a professional. um, So that was in 2014, and the album was called William. And I was thinking about ways I could celebrate, and I thought about some of the songs, and there was one song that I always liked, but I didn't love the words to. So, I was just picked my guitar up and played around with it. And I ended up rewriting a lot of the lyrics to it, and it got me thinking it might be fun to perform these songs in front of an audience with a band, record it, maybe do videos, and that was kind of the seed idea.
Yeah.
And then we ended up not doing it in front of an audience, but we did do live recordings of a few of the songs from that album, and we released it yesterday, I think Friday. Yeah,
Wow.
November.
Awesome. That's incredible. I love unique things that artists do to mark an album, which I guess is a statement on the music industry today, is that we always got to come up with something interesting, right?
Right. And there was a bit of that too where I feel like, to like well, I mean, it's almost impossible to keep relevant or keep people seeing what you're doing. So you kind of have to come up with all sorts of different types of content, as they're saying. And a lot of the stuff that counts as content, I'm not really interested in. And I started thinking about, some things that I am interested in. And I thought that's kind of one of those little projects that that would, kind of maybe align with that idea a bit of
Hmm.
more content without
Yeah.
being cynical.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Because it's the bane of our existence, isn't it? That, hey, we got into this to be music creators, not
Mhm.
social crap on this stuff.
Yeah, not everything else. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So you and I are both members of what was Folk Music Ontario, and we are now members of Folk Canada. And you got to do a showcase, Shawn.
Mhm.
I didn't get to do one. I've never got to do one. I hope I get to do one someday.
Yeah,
Tell me,
keep
tell
keep
me,
going.
tell me, was that like? To me, it looks nerve-wracking. And tell me what happens when the showcase is over.
Mhm.
What comes in,
Well,
if anything?
okay.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, no, it's a good question, and the showcase itself is a little nerve-wracking. I had I'm lucky in that I showcased once before, which was really exciting in
Nice.
2018. And that was probably the most nervous I've ever been in my life doing that showcase. Like, because it was a lot of my peers watching, and that makes
Yeah.
it more difficult. And there seemed to be more pressure. And that was year was very tough for me. And that whole thing was just like the ups and downs were crazy. So I, I think thankfully because I had that experience, I was able to come into this one with a little less stress, which helped a
Gotcha.
lot.
Yeah.
um, but it was nice. It's interesting because they don't sound check you, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if your listeners know exactly what it is, but the conference is like a regular conference, except they have stages that people perform at. In this one section have two stages, and in like a conference room thing, and they have different tables, and like so one band will play a 20-minute set, and then there's 10-minute changeover, and the next band will start, will set up and start. So it's really back and
Yeah.
forth.
That was an interesting. Hey, it was two things going on at the same time, and
Yeah,
you have to stand on stage while the other person does their thing and just be ready
and
to
just
go when
be
they switch
ready.
over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's you don't really get the sound check so
No.
much as you'd like. So the first the first showcase, you got two showcases when you are get an official showcase, and one of them is a sponsored showcase. And I was lucky enough to be included in the International Indigenous Music Conference. sponsorship stage.
Oh, excellent, excellent. That's nice.
Um, so that was really nice. And so I did that one and I played and I was having trouble with my guitar. And so I had to remedy that for the next one. Anyways, and then you know what it's like, when you're on stage, you hear bad things and you think it's awful and everyone's hating it. But then you ask the
Yeah, I
people in
get it.
front, they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't hear it at all. So it wasn't that bad.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's not bad.
Yeah.
And again, maybe for our listeners who haven't had showcases and like myself, I was cool enough to watch some showcases. Uh, at my first conference, by the way,
Oh,
man,
great.
uh, I missed so much.
Yeah, you
I was
can't see
running
it
around like a chicken with my head cut off.
for sure.
But
Yeah.
so I mean, I saw it happening when, somebody at a table would get up and talk to an artist and say, "Would you like to come over to our table?" kind of thing. And I
Right.
thought, "Oh, so that's how it works."
Hmm. That's,
And
yeah.
yeah, I guess. Is it was it good for you after the fact?
I think I won't know the answer to that question for a little bit.
Sure. Okay.
um, so one of the things you try to do with these conferences is you try to get people from different festivals to come see you,
Try.
and
Yeah.
hopefully they'll book you at their festival over maybe the next year or next couple of years.
Yeah.
Um, I've since applied to a lot of their festivals that were represented, and I did meet some of the directors and talk to them, and so maybe something good will come from it, but I don't really know yet. But hopefully, I mean, the experience is worth it, and I got a lot of really great feedback from musicians and other people about my songs, and I think that's worth a lot too. Yeah.
That's very good. Yeah.
Mhm.
So tell me about Softer Scissors, Sean.
Ooh.
What's the story there?
Well, that's my this year I released my full length album, studio album called Softer Scissors,
Right.
the fourth full length album, I think. Um, and yeah, that came out in April, I believe. And it is full band album for the most part, all original songs, kind of a collection of tunes over the last few years, including some songs that stretch from the pandemic. And
Nice.
um, yeah, it's something I'm very proud of, and I would love more people to listen to it.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, Sean's stuff is you're about as close as classical folk as I've ever come across, Sean. I mean,
Oh, thank you,
yeah, you have yeah, it's a super pleasant stuff that you should listen to, people. I mean,
thank
you know, but you know what I tell folks after I was at the FMO
you.
in August, I ran around telling everybody going, why do we listen to the radio? Why do we listen?
Yeah,
There's so much better music out there.
yeah. You
I
just
just
need to
witnessed it.
totally. It's just you just people need to be more curious, and there's so much great music out there for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you got it. Now,
Mhm.
as I mentioned, one of the focuses of this show is that we want to talk to artists like yourself, who are negotiating and pursuing a career in the 21st century in the music
Mhm.
business. What was an indicator for you, Sean, that said, okay, time to go full time?
Well, I mean, I'll say that I don't go full time. So
Oh, I
for
see. So you have some
so
other,
yeah, I've always kind of had one foot in the working world to like make sure my bills are paid, and
mm, good,
so I do
smart
work.
man.
Yeah, it just I know a lot of musicians who are full timers, and it just seems so stressful um, and tough, and so I do work a couple jobs as well. So yeah, so that answers that question. But
Okay, well, there you
so,
go.
but I will say
Well,
about
sorry
when I
about that. I just,
no, that's okay.
you look
I
like
will
a
say
busy
that
guy that way.
yeah, I will say that when there was I did make a conscious decision to keep pursuing music
Yes.
in my probably in my 20s, be into my 30s, where I thought, well, this is something I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And then how am I going to do it? How am I going to afford to do it? And all those kind of questions come up. And,
Yeah.
I'll just keep doing it, whether people are listening to it or not. And more and more with the way things are, it's hard to know that if people are listening. So, but I keep doing it. So,
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's all that matters, I think, in the
yeah,
end.
I
Now,
agree.
I've asked this for a few other artists on the show, and the answers are wide and varied. If
Cool.
you had a choice between a DIY career and a recording contract, would you jump on that recording contract knowing that a lot of your things that you have to do now would be you wouldn't have to do anymore?
Right. I mean, there's so many variants into that, like what
Yes.
go into that, like what we're talking about in a recording. I mean, I would probably, if I could get rid of half the work that I have to do to like do what I do, I would. uh,
Hmm.
I would like to know what I'm giving up for that. Um, but I feel like now at my age now, I probably would give up more than I would have given up, 10 years ago or 15, 20 years ago,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
because it would be nice to, it'd be nice to have someone who can financially back this. Like that's a big one.
Yeah, that's always the big one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Um, so are you a wintertime touring kind of person, or are you just hit and run touring, as I say, go to the show, come back home?
I do a lot of that.
Yeah.
I I usually don't do a lot of shows winter, but I think next into the next year I'll be doing a few things, which would be
Yeah.
nice. Nothing solidified, but I have a friend coming over from Iceland. We're going to try to do some shows together and in March. So
Hmm.
excited to do that. But we don't have anything solid yet, but a few irons in the fire. But uh,
Exactly.
yeah, so I'll be doing a bit.
That's
But,
good.
but generally speaking, I have done a fair bit of touring over the years. Not a lot recently. It's been a lot less, but more like little quickies,
Yeah, I get it.
which is
Yeah.
still fun. Yeah.
Yeah, the long term tour is becoming a difficult thing.
Mhm.
And like you said, sometimes you got to go out and do two shows on the weekend and then come back again, and
Yeah.
and then go back and forth.
Yeah. And
Um,
I'd love to get out on the road to a few places again. I would like to get back to the East Coast of Canada again. I do like
right.
playing there. And I would love to get back to Europe again. I've had done some touring there pre-COVID. It would be nice to pick up some of that again.
Hmm. Iceland.
Mhm.
In your on your website, it says it's your favorite place to play. Tell me what about all about Iceland and why it's so cool.
I think, Iceland is just like one of the most beautiful places in the world. I went there once many years ago as a tourist and fell in love with it. And then I was able to go back in maybe 2000 or maybe 2016 or 2017. There was a small festival that was happening in Reykjavik, and I was able to play that, and it was such a wonderful experience. All the people were so nice. I like ran out of it was like a weekend festival, and I ran out of the merch I brought the day
Nice.
before I played. It was like
Wow.
yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I didn't bring a lot of merch, but it was I was like shocked. Um, and I've been back since, and I haven't had quite the same experience. But I mean, but it's always a great experience. Like good audiences, and just the people are great, and you're in a beautiful country.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and and you've played in Europe a little bit too, have you, Sean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a bit in Germany mostly, Belgium, Netherlands.
Yeah.
Did one
The
show.
motherland.
Yeah, yeah, one
I'm
show.
I'm I'm half Belgian.
Oh, great. Yeah, so I've done a few shows in Belgium and
Yeah.
Netherlands, and one show in Copenhagen, and yeah,
Nice, cool. That's very cool.
it's fun. Yeah, it's
Sean,
nice. Oh, sorry.
yeah, this came to mind when you because you've played these different places,
Mhm.
and I haven't, unfortunately. About the best I've done is play in front of family for in the States for my wife's
Yeah,
family, and that's about it at an event or something. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So I've never done any kind of touring, but it does appear to me that countries like Germany and other in Europe and Iceland,
Hmm.
they really, 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 really value music.
Hmm.
I think differently than we do in North America. Can you
Yeah,
speak to that?
yeah. I think that's a fair assessment. I think. Well, a lot of those European countries, my guess, this is like just me thinking out loud, is, those countries have had the arts a lot longer than we have, right?
Very true.
Um, I think that plays into it. And they've like a lot of those countries have been supporting the arts at a high level for a long time.
Hmm.
So you play somewhere like Germany and people sit and listen. I tell people like I play a lot of the same types of venues I play here. So not necessarily the most fancy venues, but everywhere I play, people listen and people are appreciative. And it's such a wonderful feeling to be listened to. Um,
Yeah,
and
no
I think
kidding.
in a lot of
No
those places,
kidding.
like even if they don't really like what you're doing, they'll still listen out of respect and move on once you're done.
Well, hey, you register your vote with your feet or your dollar bill, one or the other, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting because, like I said, it was just a feeling and not having experienced it, but you know, um, I think the question that came into my head was as soon as you said you sold all your merch out the night
Yeah,
before, I'm
yeah.
like, geez, I'd be lucky if I sell 20 bucks in merch.
Right. Well, I mean, that's how I feel a lot of the times nowadays. This was, even like 2017 when this happened is like kind of a world ago,
Yes. Yeah.
and people's buying habits were even different back then. If you go back like
Yeah.
not that far, like selling merch is tough now. I think, it's not like the old days. It's not like not like the 2000s when everyone was buying CDs and you could
Hmm.
sell a bunch of CD, you can guarantee to sell a bunch of CDs at a show.
Yeah.
Um, that's not the case anymore. I've got a lot of those CDs still sitting around in the closet behind me there. Like,
Yeah, I get it.
and records, lots of records in that closet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, Speaking of CDs and still having a lot left over, have you gone down the vinyl road
Yes,
with your releases, and
I
have they
have.
been more successful than your CD?
No, I wouldn't say more successful.
Sales
CD,
wise, that is, anyways.
yeah, I would say like because the first record I did was for the album William, which was 10 years ago, and but 10 years ago, people were still much more interested in CDs. Like,
True.
I sold more CDs, and I gave away a lot more CDs too back then because like everybody would take CDs. So like college radio would take CDs. Anybody, you go to FMO back then, and that was your business card, was your CD, right? You'd leave with a stack of CDs every year, like two stacks like this, and of course you were there this year. That doesn't happen. I left with one CD this year,
Yeah, really. Yeah,
so
yeah.
so it's never been like a better seller than CDs. Maybe now, like if I look at, I haven't really checked, but if I look at Softer Scissors, I would say probably the records has sold more than the CDs.
Hmm.
Um, but I get, honestly, I buy LPs because I'm a vinyl guy. I'm a vinyl collector. You can see all my records. That's like
Yeah,
half of my records back there. I built those shelves recently, and
nice.
I have another thing of records in the other room. I'm a vinyl guy, and I wanted my albums to be beside, Elvis Costello or whoever. It's
Yeah, well done. Yeah.
I'll buy, I get that one record from my shelf, and then I've got like another 399 to sell.
Hmm. Yeah. So in the music business, what kind of changes would you like to see that would be favorable to a DIY musician that isn't there right now?
Um, well, the streaming is a hellscape, as you know. Like
Yeah.
streaming, I mean, Spotify especially is like irredeemable. It's anti-music, I would say. It's all the things they do for musicians. It's very little. They pay the least out of the
Hmm.
major streamers. They they're eventually they will, once they figure out how to use AI to create all the music, they will, and we'll be
Yeah.
gone, right? They'll do it as soon as they can, as soon as they can figure it out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of do that when you look at, playlists are like moods, which I don't mind, I get it, but like playlisters, if you've ever tried to like get playlisters to take your songs, they're not looking for good lyrics,
No.
right? They're looking for a style, very, 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 very specific style, sound, um, and like if anything's out of that even a little bit, they're not interested. And unfortunately, those are the people who like really keep that going, the streaming thing going. So it's not very easy unless you want to like create music, vapid music for, which I don't. I'm not
Yeah,
saying
I
that's
hear you.
a bad thing. A lot of people don't mind. So, anyways,
Yeah.
I'll have to say that like I would love to see either streaming get ethical, which I don't think we will see that. I would love to see people get off of streaming and or at least move. Like, so I use Tidal when I stream,
Oh yeah,
uh,
right. Yeah.
and I only do that because they're a little better than Spotify. And I always say if Spotify tomorrow decided to like change everything and become better for musicians, I would jump ship in a second. Like I think we need to vote with our dollar
Hmm.
to support the places that support musicians the most. And I don't think it's a hard thing to do. It's really easy to switch over to another streaming
Yeah,
platform.
I mean, I use DistroKid for my distribution, and then it says it's easily to just take that check mark it next to Spotify for
Mm,
distribution and go click and shut that thing off.
sure. And I mean,
But
that's a tough thing, you know, like that's an interesting point about musicians, whether like if all music, it's going to be hard. It's hard to leave Spotify. Like most of my stuff is on Spotify
yeah, same here.
because like I can't, you know, like that's unfortunately what people used to listen. So like you and I'm sure you feel the same way as me, is like the most important thing is that we want more people to hear our music, right?
Correct.
So I've got the music on Spotify, but I don't use Spotify and I hate Spotify. But, you know, unless there's like a mass like exodus, I probably won't go anytime soon, unfortunately, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that.
Hmm. And
Anyways,
I think we have to be there because a lot of the things we deal with that we are in partnership, I guess you could say, like showcases, like
mm,
festivals, they will look there
yeah.
first, you know. And
And festivals,
unfortunately, that can be a bad thing if you're not there, but also a bad thing if you are there with not much numbers either.
well, that's true, yeah. And unfortunately, I filled out a few applications for festivals, and they do ask for a Spotify link usually.
Yeah,
You're seeing a little bit more variation now, where they'll take a Bandcamp link or something,
I'm seeing more of that
which
now
I
with the
prefer.
applications I've put in so far.
Bandcamp's a little better right now, so
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's always the challenge in that
it
respect
is.
is
Yeah,
that streaming business.
yeah.
Let's take a look at it the home front, Shawn. How's and family wise? Do you get a lot of support from your family and are they there and at the shows and buying the stuff and
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my family's in Aurelia, which is about an hour and a half north of Toronto, where I live.
hmm.
So I don't play up there a lot. So, but when I do, they definitely come out, and you know, my mom especially has been a big supporter my entire life, and
Nice.
she always she'll buy like 10 CDs every time a new album comes out, and like
So go and give them to her friends for
you
gifts.
know, yeah, it's just people who want them who buy them, or she just wants to have stock ready to go in case
I
anyone,
love it.
which is super nice. And yeah, and she'll buy, and she also buys the stuff from, you know, like for my brother and sister's families too. She'll just
Yeah.
buy it all and like, here we go for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and you know, my dad was very supportive, you know, when I was growing up and going through music and driving me to gigs and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely have a supportive family, who will still come out if I play close enough to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I had that, unfortunately. It's not that my family isn't supportive. I mean, my parents are long gone for over 20 years. And I'm sure if my mother saw what I was doing today, she'd be rolling over in her grave.
Wish it wasn't her thing.
No, my mother was actually a violin play, second chair in an orchestra in Belgium.
Oh wow.
Back in those days, the 1930s, when my mother was growing up, you know, at the during before the war and after the war, lessons were free, and if you
Mm.
when you got good enough, you were in the orchestra. My
Oh,
grandfather was in the orchestra, and my uncles were in the orchestra.
wow.
But she always said, Music is fun to do." But she says, "Don't think you can make a living at that," because that's what her grandfather told her. Because I guess she was pretty good, and I didn't know
Wow.
that. So there you
Uh,
go. It got pushed
yeah.
down on you from me
Yeah,
from previous generations.
for sure. Yeah, that
Yeah,
stuff is hard to shake if you hear that from someone, and then, you know, and then you have kids going through trying to get into it as well. That must be
yeah,
those are hard
exactly.
to
Yeah.
shake.
I
Yeah.
remember when my son was growing up, he's a bass player and well,
Mm.
he does his music just for fun too. He has
Mm.
a band in Edmonton. And I remember when he was younger, I think he had mentioned to me and my wife and said, "I'm with these guys. I think we're gonna maybe go on the road for a little bit." And we were like, "Go,
Yeah.
do it."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honest. Yeah. Like playing music. I mean, I don't think people have to be professionals. I don't
Mm-mm.
even that. Sometimes I don't consider myself a professional, you know, like sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, you know, and I don't think it matters. Like, I think music should be something that you want to do because you love doing it. And maybe to some extent, you can't not do it, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
And, you know, and then of course, when you create something, you want to share it with people. So, uh,
Yeah.
you just find places to share it and find people to share it with. And
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's what it's all about. And
Yeah.
if you make a little money on the way, that's great. That's
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
mm,
Yeah, and see, that's why your mom is probably so happy, Shawn, because You still got money coming in, but you can still make your music at the same time.
It's true. I can, yeah, exactly. I can feed
Yeah.
myself as well. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I gotta love it. Yeah, my wife had very good support too. When she was 18 years old, her father told her to go get a job. So she
Mm,
found a band playing at the local hotel, the Ramada Inn, and they needed a keyboard player singer. And
mm.
2 weeks after she graduated high school, she was on the road for 2 years.
Amazing. Hey, it was easier to make, well, it could be easier to make money back then to do that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, when I was first in Toronto, I started playing with a Pink Floyd cover band. Uh,
Nice.
and yeah, and the guys were all like, I was in my early 20s. They're all in their like late 30s, early 40s. They're basically the age I am now.
Sure.
So I was like, I'm playing with these old guys. And and they would talk about what it was like when they're playing in bands in the 80s, and they would play like they would book, they were nobodies, and they would still book a like a week stint at the Horseshoe with a guarantee of a reasonable amount of money and like a rider, and they would play to a full house every night. This was the mid 80s, late 80s, and things rapidly changed after that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, tell me about it. Yeah, I remember when my son first moved out to Edmonton and he told me what he was getting paid for a four-piece band for a
No.
weekend. And I went, "What?
Mm.
Four figures? How does that happen?"
Yeah, I know. That's cool.
I
Yeah, fun.
love it. Shawn William Clarke, thank you so much for coming on the show. I want you to tell people how they can find more about you and your music and anything else you do if they want to follow you around.
Well, if they just go to ShawnWilliamClarke.com, all my stuff is there and my links to my socials. I'm probably mostly on Instagram, and I think I'm Shawn W. Clarke on there, but the link's in my website. And yeah, I would say, listen to my music. The new EP is out, but unfortunately, it isn't on Spotify or Tidal right now for
Hmm.
reasons I don't quite understand. I'm trying to figure that out with CD Baby right now. So if you have Apple, you can listen to it, and Bandcamp. Please go to Bandcamp, actually.
Yeah, go to
Look,
Bandcamp and you know what? Don't stream it, people. Buy the damn thing. It's really
yeah,
not that
it's
much money.
not that much money, and I'll love you forever.
And
People.
and where can you get an album anymore? Like even a CD, brand new. Where can you get an album for $10?
Yeah.
You
No,
know, or
yeah,
or
totally.
or 12 or whatever, you
Yeah.
know? It
Yeah,
just doesn't
exactly.
happen.
Yeah, and you can also get albums and CDs on my Bandcamp too
Right?
if you're a merch person.
Exactly. Um, Shawn, you got any gigs coming up?
I'm doing one gig on next Sunday, the 8th, I think, the Sunday,
Yeah, that sounds about
um,
right.
at the Transac.
Oh
It's
yeah.
in Toronto. It's going to be a songwriter in the round, Philip Von Esch.
Oh,
He's the one who sets it up, and he does it once a month, I think. And I can't remember. There's another person playing as well. So yeah, it should be a fun time. I love the Transac. It's a great place to go in Toronto.
there you go. Shawn William Clarke, folks. Go find his music and listen to it. It's wonderful stuff and some heartfelt songwriting going on in there.
Thank you.
And you can't beat it. Thank you for coming on the show, Shawn.
Thanks for having me. It's great. Thank you.
All right. And that is the end of that one. Thanks again, Shawn. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for reaching out. Um,
You're hey, anytime. And I'll be watching you. And if you happen to decide to get towards Northern Ontario, let
hmm,
me know.
where are you?
Sault Ste. Marie.
Oh, Sault Ste. Marie. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I do. I would love to get up that way. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
will let you
There's
know.
we're also my wife and I have decided that we're going to have our backyard available for a house concerts.
Well, that's what I'm looking for more these days is house concerts. So if you set that up, if you're going to be doing a series or something, let me know. I would love to come up.
Yeah, basically what we're trying to do is, it's not for anybody and everybody. We're going with people we know and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and but uh, yeah, when we start figuring it out, I know we got one. I don't
Hmm.
know if you met Michelle Neri.
No.
Michelle's he was the first episode on this show.
Oh, okay.
Um, he was at FMO too, and he's going to be playing in June.
Great.
So we got something started, and I think Pete Eastmuir is going to stop by.
Mhm.
So
Great.
I'll keep you posted, man.
Please do. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Shawn, I appreciate your time again, and we'll watch your socials, and you'll get tagged on it when you see
Great.
that it airs.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right, man. Have a good one.
All right. Have a good night.
Yeah, thank you. Bye bye.